Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. Welcome. And we'll be talking about igniting innovation through deep empathy. My name is Stuart Radkin. I lead the innovation practice here at YourEncore. We focus on solving growth and cost innovation challenges, work across the spectrum of startups, mid-market, and large multinational companies to accelerate innovation initiatives in these areas. As far as our agenda for today, we'll be together for an hour, about 50 minutes of content, a discussion for 30 minutes, and then questions and answers, which we'd like to hold till the end. But you're welcome to email and post questions as we go through the system, and then we'll have a quick wrap up. For those of you who don't know YourEncore, we are a leading provider of proven expertise to the biopharma, medical device, and consumer goods industries. We have a business model that offers flexible resourcing and consulting services of highly experienced, specialized capabilities and talent. And the community is made up of mostly 25 plus year experienced individuals in their domains or functions. The majority of them hold advanced degrees. So this webinar is about empathy, and we'll focus on ways to gain deeper customer stakeholder insights through the use of deep empathy, which is extremely helpful in the innovation approach and creating superior product, services, and experiences. So I'd like to introduce Jandie. Her background, Jandie led client-side innovation with Procter Gamble for 25 years. She now leads innovation workshops and training for Fortune 500 companies, small startups, and mid-market companies. She leverages her background in behavioral psychology, sociology, neuroscience, uses tools and approaches from a variety of fields, including design thinking, the Osborne-Parnes model, improv, sensorial exploration, and the growth strategic visioning approach, graphic facilitation model as well. She received her Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sociology from Miami, and she's advanced training and certification in design thinking from Stanford, IDEO, Innovation P&G Gym, Innovation Facilitation, and Creative Problem Solving Institute. So just from a housekeeping standpoint, again, please submit your questions through the webinar software using the webinar question panel, or you can email them to me directly, and I will bring those back at the end when we get to our Q&A portion of the program. So what we'd like to do is to start off by just gaining a sense of where your understanding is. Our key focus is on empathy driving innovation. And so we want to take a quick pulse of where you are. And this should just take a couple of seconds. And if you wouldn't mind answering a couple of questions, then we'll just see where the group is. Very few people don't know what empathy is. That's good. So we'll dig in and explore some of the concepts and approaches, advanced thinking, and connect the empathy approaches to innovation. So Jandie, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. I'm excited to be here with everyone today. Thank you for calling in and spending some time with us. As most of you probably know, there are many approaches to innovation, and no matter the model that you're used to using or currently using, successful innovation all require some key components. One, some sort of opportunity identification, including identifying trends, the socioeconomic and business environment in which you're playing, anything that actually may have an influence on your business. Two, really getting to a deep, truly empathic understanding of the person or people you wish to serve or the people you want to sell to, including the ability to articulate how you intend to serve them. And third, a method to generate ideas that address your end users' needs and turn those ideas into products, services, or solutions. And four, a way to evaluate your ideas. So all successful models have all of these components, no matter what they're called at each stage. Many of you are probably familiar with the design thinking model developed by Stanford University. Whether you are using a model like design thinking, IDEO's three-step model, or the lean startup model, which people typically think of as discover, develop, learn, and then act, whether the steps are 3, 4, or 6, all innovation should be grounded in deep empathy for your end users, the people you are innovating for, and the people you hope will eventually pay money for your product or service. This is the framework I'll be using in our discussion today. What is design thinking? A good short answer is a human-centered model that starts with the experience of your end user. Over the course of my 30 years leading innovation initiatives for P&G and other Fortune 100 companies, I found that one of the critical factors contributing to the success of an innovation effort is the degree to which it is built on deep human understanding, the degree to which you actually understand your end user. This is an excellent quote from Steve Jobs. Apple is all about the experience. From Steve himself, you've got to start with the customer experience and work back toward the technology, not the other way around. Some of you may remember a product called Scent Stories. This is an example of technology driving innovation versus the other way around. This is a Febreze launch that focused mainly on functional benefits. The discs for the machine change scents like a CD player changes songs, reducing sensory adaptation. Your ability to perceive a scent declines after a short time. For example, most of us can't smell our own cologne after a short time after applying. It happens with home fragrances too. This machine delivered on a functional need because it switched between scents, so one would notice the new scent each time. However, it did not have some of the emotional drivers or aesthetics that other scent deliveries offer. So no flickering lights, no visual ambiance, and the machine was actually a bit large, maybe the size of a small toaster, so people didn't really know where to put it. I put mine behind a chair trying to disguise it, but you could still see it. The initiative died a fairly quick death, and had the team focused more on the total end user experience and the desires around that experience, without already having decided on the delivery system, they may have created a totally different product. And in fact, Febreze eventually did. Now they have something much better. It's a dual plug-in that switches between scents. A useful step is to think about how your brand may be delivering on end user needs, from functional to emotional. The best brands become part of a user's identity. For example, some people identify so much with a brand that they might say things like, I'm a Mac person, or I'm an Apple person, or I'm a Harley guy or a Harley gal. We've known Saab owners who cling to their identity with Saab no matter how many times they've had to take their Saab into the repair shop. People use words like my Starbucks. I know people who were so identified with the Starbucks logo they felt betrayed when Starbucks changed it. I've heard a woman say, if Trader Joe's was a man, I would marry him. Most brands have difficulty getting to those higher stages of emotional connection with their end users. I want you to note that at the higher level, this is not just for luxury brands or what we typically think of as identity brands, the big brands that are out there making a statement, the ones you wear on your body or the purse you carry. When I worked on Bounty paper towels, we had a segment of users that felt very emotional about their Bounty brand. I found that any brand can really get there to the top levels if they really get to know on a deep level their end user and the experience that person desires. Next slide, please. How do you create meaningful experiences? Disney is all about the end user experience. They were the first to create entertainment experiences while you wait in line for 2 hours, priming the guest for a good time when the actual event happens. Disney employees all have to spend time interacting with guests on a regular basis. Disney now has a magic band for all family members. It opens your room door, allows you to charge food and merchandise, and unlocks special surprises throughout Disney properties. The experience, the empathy experience is feeling of independence for children with delightful, customized surprises along the way, and a freedom for parents. They can leave their wallet or a purse behind and be unencumbered by it. And of course, the value for Disney, you probably end up spending a lot more money this way when you don't take your credit card out for each purchase. Back in the day, what if Howard Schultz only listened to what coffee drinkers said they wanted? In the 90s, I was working on the Folgers brand. When we asked directly, what were consumers saying about coffee back then? We heard things like, I have a few acceptable brands, but after that, price is the most important factor in my purchase decision. We had price wars between Folgers and Maxwell House. Then Howard Schultz went out and transformed a commodity category around an experience. He really dove deep into the experience he wanted to create, attempting to recreate the Italian coffee experience for Americans. In 1987, there were only 6 Starbucks stores. Now there are over 27,000 Starbucks around the world, not even counting their food, drug, mass presence. And what if Zappos had only asked women in an online survey, would you shop for shoes online? Well, actually they did, and most women said no, absolutely not. I have to try shoes on first. But Zappos dug deeper. They went shopping with women. They noticed what women do when shopping for shoes, trying on shoe after shoe, walking around, rolling up their pants legs to see how it might look with a skirt, looking in the mirror, bringing clothes in from home to see if they matched. Zappos realized the need to put together the whole outfit in front of your own mirror, switching out shoes by color, by style, and maybe even heel height. Zappos was one of the first to allow you to order as many as you want, keep one or none, and send back the rest. No shipping charges. With all due respect to PepsiCo and the Doritos brand, who really doesn't love Doritos? This may be an example of where insights may not have led to full empathy for the experience. I worked in the snacks business on Pringles for about 5 years, and yes, I had the insight. Many people don't like the chip residue on their fingers, especially gamers who eat while they play. And we did find that more women complained about this than men. So what went wrong for Doritos? Not working on the project, I can't say for sure, but I know we have to be very careful about telling people what they should want. People don't want to be stereotyped. This is an example where it shows even if you get the product right, the communication might be critically wrong. Communication strategy is critically important no matter what the product is. Perhaps it would be better to target people who need their hands to be clean while, for example, gaming, using cell phone, etc. And if women disproportionately choose your product, that is fine too. So it is important to understand your target, get the product right, but equally important to communicate the right benefit, something your target can relate to, or rather wants to relate to. P&G was always very data-driven during my 25 years there. However, even with tons of data, it was always much more convincing when our proposition could give senior management an experience, so they could also have the empathy experience. I led the Insights Empathy work for the P&G brand strategy for the Olympic Games campaign. When we pulled our customer stories together, there were tears in the room, so we knew we found the magic, the deep insight. The deep insight stories led to a very successful campaign across all P&G brands and the corporate P&G brand around the globe. We grew equity with consumers, and we got a huge bump in retailer promotions across all participating brands around the globe. One important thing to remember is when you feel it, when you really feel something at the head, heart, and gut level, you know you've hit on something worth pursuing. So our CMO said that he didn't even need to see the data because he could feel the empathy through the stories we were telling. In the 2 blogs I wrote about innovation, I overviewed these 6 steps. We don't have time in this webinar to go over each step in depth, but I will touch on them briefly, and you can refer to the blogs, or happy to have an offline discussion about each of these if you'd like. The first step is opportunity. This first step is grounding your team by identifying the landscape and scope for your innovation project. This includes your company and category and or brand strategy, current and emerging trends that have an impact on your business, segmentation and targeting strategies, competitive review, knowing your competitors and what their equity is and how they're serving their end users, and any other key areas which have an impact on the future of your business. For example, regulatory specifics. Empathy or empathize. This is about getting to know your end user on a deep, intuitive level, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. Define. This step takes the information you've learned in the empathy stage and defines the important aspects of your target and the environment in which you intend to innovate. This stage lays out the consumer needs, desires, tensions, and deeper insights that are important for your project. And the next step, ideate. This step is about developing ideas to solve for the problems, needs, or desires of your end users, the areas you defined in the step before. Prototype and test. These two steps should be an iterative cycle of co-creation with your target end user. A critical aspect of the design thinking model is rapid prototyping and experimentation to gather end user input, failing and pivoting quickly to learn more. Okay, back to empathy. How do we get there? I often use the term slow down to go fast. When you slow down, take the time to get to know your target end user on a head, heart, and gut level, your innovation project can actually go faster later. When your team gets to know your target end user on a deep, intuitive level, you develop a gut level feel for what will or won't resonate. Therefore, you do not later have to answer each new question with more research. You and your team will have developed an empathic, intuitive level of understanding so that you know what he or she will want and not want without researching every single decision. And in fact, we have built-in wiring for empathy. About 20 years ago, scientists discovered mirror neurons. We are actually hardwired for empathy. There is a fascinating TED Talk explaining mirror neurons in much more detail, but it explains a lot about human interactions and how we develop empathy by simply observing other people. Even the reptilian part of our brain is wired for human empathy. So we can all get there when we are interacting with people directly in the same room, not behind a focus group mirror or by text. What is an insight? We talk a lot about insights. We often have pages and pages of insights on our teams, but do they really get us to a deep, intuitive understanding of our end user? When people talk about insights, they often have a list of things that include things that are human truths and observations rather than deep insights. So we can start with an example of a universal or human truth. In this case, humans desire emotional connections. An observation around this could be dog owners buy toys and clothes for their dogs. An insight could be dog owners, or rather parents, dog parents think of pets as family members. But what is empathy? The traditional definition of empathy is a bit incomplete. True empathy is more than just imagining someone else's experience or walking in their shoes. It is about really making the choice, a choice to have an experience, to put yourself in touch with the head, heart, and gut of the matter, a choice to really get to know on a personal level your end user. So what is a more empathetic way to articulate the insight? So back to our example about dog owners thinking of pets as family members. Empathy, someone cares that I come home. Life isn't so lonely with a dog. If you can reach this emotion, this level of emotion, if you can personally feel it, you know you have something, you have a deep insight to work with. And you can imagine that you might create something very different between the insight of dog parents think of pets as family members to the deeper empathy insight that someone cares that you come home. Potentially that could create a very different initiative and a very different communication strategy. Different methods access different levels of knowledge. Consumers can't easily articulate their desires. So how do you get there? For deep insights for empathy, you have to go deep into the layers of understanding, getting to more tacit, unspoken, or latent subconscious motivations. Much of the research people use is only gathering knowledge at the surface level. Innovation research is best done through observation and human-to-human conversation. So how do you get there? Before doing the discovery work to get your team to the deep insights, there are 3 recommended steps that I have. 1, assembling the right team. The right team is critical. The ideal team is a mix of people across functions leveraging both internal and external experts. Include an insights professional, someone to guide you through the design and interpretation of results, making sure questions are asked in a non-biasing way and answers are probed to reveal the deep levels of insights. This also ensures observations and results are interpreted more objectively and lead to more actionable insights. External subject experts can bring fresh perspective and a broader experience to draw from, sparking more transformational and disruptive ideas. The next is self-awareness. I always like to start a deep dive into empathy with self-awareness exercises for those on the innovation team. Humans are biased creatures. We filter everything through our own belief system or our own specific agendas. Neuroscientists have proven that 80% or more of our neuroprocessing is subconscious. We like to think we are rational beings, but science proves us wrong every time. Of course, we can't put aside all of our biases, but there are tools and exercises to help us identify our biases so we can observe and listen more objectively. Another tactic is desktop or online discovery. Getting to know the space you are exploring and the questions you may want to ask in the course of your deeper empathy work in the next step. Reread any research you have in-house on your target user group, the category, adjacent categories, etc. Search industry associations, blogs, published reports, discussion boards, competitors' websites, etc. With the explosion of content marketing, there's an incredible amount of free or low-cost information available on just about any topic. You can read product and service reviews. What do people say they do or feel? People tell lots of stories for free. This all helps you formulate your questions and some hypotheses to explore in the next empathy stage. And to help you get started with this exploration stage, we're sending all participating in this webinar a cheat sheet that will help you find free or low-cost research to help you plan for the next stage. The most direct path to empathy is getting to know your end user on a personal basis through human interaction. I always recommend team members roll up their sleeves and interact directly with consumers themselves along with me or another professional moderator. Here are 5 of my favorite engagement methods, although there are others. I find these reveal very rich insights and lead to deep empathy, essential for breakthrough innovation. I'll go into each of these a bit in more detail. On the last blog I wrote, there's a bit more detail, but I will quickly overview these. The first one, 360-degree interviews. Talk one-on-one with your end users, but mostly listen. Interact with people regularly who have an impact on your product or service that your project is focused on. Talk with people, also talk to the people they interact with regularly and who have an impact on their decisions, their motivation, their buying behavior, people in their daily lives. This is a great way to really get to know your end user and everything about them. Spend time in their homes asking questions, do pantry checks, go shopping with them, whatever area you think is important in understanding for your project. Another tactic is live as if. This type of discovery is a great tool to truly understand the challenges your end user might face that they are unable to fully articulate. I've used many different methods depending on the category or innovation area. For example, I've had people live on the budget of their end consumer. So for example, if your target consumer has limited income, live on their budget for a month to understand some of the trade-offs they make on a regular basis. For example, they may be making a decision between buying a half a tank of gas, so they can buy school supplies for their children. Another tool is what I call explore. See and explore all the areas and venues that may interest or influence your end user. For example, if your end user is a mom of a toddler, go hang out at a children's museum, or go sit in the waiting room of a pediatrician's office, or ask a daycare center if you can observe drop-off and pick-up. Seeing firsthand both what delights and frustrates your target leads to greater empathy and spurs creativity. Ethnographic discovery. Ethnographic research is, by definition, observational research. Interacting with people, observing them, where they live, where they play, where they shop, on their commute, and even where they work. Spend time with your end user so that you have an opportunity to observe various behaviors within the scope and context of your project. Often you will identify compensating behaviors that people are unaware of themselves. I've led discovery sessions that included shopping with people for hair products and then coming back to their home to watch them color their hair. When you watch the process, you learn a lot more than asking people to define or describe every step out of context. They always miss a few steps. Another example is peer groups. Peer groups are naturally occurring groups of people with whom your target end user regularly interacts with, such as friends, neighbors, classmates, family members, etc. It is a particularly useful method when there is a strong social component involved in your product or service. For example, home entertaining, home cooking, or mutual decision making. For example, insurance or car buying. Peer group research can happen in homes, in shopping centers, shopping trips, or wherever people might naturally congregate. Okay, what do we do with all this empathy? Define. This is the stage where you bring all the learning together, all the learning that your team has accrued to this point. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you a helpful template to bring all that together. This is something we'll send you after the webinar today, so you can use this in your own projects if you like. It's a great way to capture your learning. Use one or more sheets per person that you talk to. You can use this both to capture your notes and also to use as a summary tool after you've done all your research. I usually customize this to include a photo representing the target end user in the center, a different one for each potential segment that you might be exploring. And some additional areas of importance in the category I would add to the dimensions that you see here, but still keep it fairly high level. For example, for beauty innovation projects, I would include a section about attitudes toward beauty. For a beard care project, I included attitudes about being male or being masculine. This is another helpful tool. This is a great formula I use to teach people how to think through the learning and more quickly get to actionable insights. It is important to understand the motivation behind behavior or desires, and finding the tension is critical. And here's an example on one way to use this template. So a human truth could be, I believe my home reflects who I am, or people judge me when they see my home. A motivation along those lines could be, therefore, I want the house to look and smell clean. The tension in this situation could be, however, I have very little time to clean. Or another tension could be, however, I hate that I have to do all the cleaning by myself. Notice that you might come up with a very different idea for the two different tensions. For example, the time crunch tension, you might create a quick clean item, but for the second tension, having to do it all myself, you might create a child or a preteen friendly cleaning tool. Now I will quickly touch on the three other stages of the design thinking model to round this out. Ideate. This is a step that many people feel that they're familiar with. I've heard people complain about this process, and I think often it's because people go into this without a clear structure and without some of the key components that I'm going to highlight here. So one, as I mentioned, structure is very important for an ideation session, having very defined phases of diversion and conversion so that you don't end up at the end of the day with more ideas than you know what to do with. Some good, some bad, and some you just don't know what to do with. 2, have very clear and deep understanding of the target audience, as we've already covered. 3, time, ample time to really be creative. You can't rush genius, really. Having a meeting of an hour to ideate really just doesn't get you there. You have to spend time, at least the first couple hours, just getting out ideas that have already been pursued before. You really need to work at this for a while to get out the breakthrough, really novel ideas. And 4, play. People think more creatively when they are having fun and they don't feel judged. Make sure your ideation session suspends judgment, at least during the ideation stage. 5, inspiration. Ideation happens much more if you have very rich material, including interactive tools, images, guest speakers, and thought provokers from other areas or industries to spur fresh thinking and stretch creativity. And 6, expertise from participants with deep experience in the category, business, and across functions, plus experts from outside the team, the client company and the category. Looking at a problem from more than one perspective always yields richer results. And then the next 2 steps in the design thinking model, prototype and test. This should be an iterative cycle of co-creation with your target end user. A critical aspect of the design thinking model, as well as other models, is rapid prototyping and experimentation to gather end user input. The first prototypes can be a concept, digital prototype, or a very rough physical rendering made with cardboard, duct tape, and stickers. The first physical rendering doesn't have to be functional. In fact, you don't want to have too much functionality built in because you might lose an opportunity to learn more about your end user's wishes, what they wish the object might do, or what the service might provide for them. The idea is to put something in your user's hands or mind so they can help you learn. Depending on the project dynamics, investment, etc., the testing can be anything from small qualitative discussions to in-home usage tests, test panels, purchase panels, social media, etc. Through the course of this process, the opportunities are uncovered, solutions are refined, and the problem is solved, or the team quickly pivots in a different direction, ultimately getting to something that ignites passion and therefore purchase from your end user. Here are just some additional thoughts before we go to the Q&A. Empathy is key to delighting your end user, and hopefully that came across in what we've been talking about so far. The second one, delight drives sales, word of mouth, buzz, and repeat sales. Bring the entire team along. Ideally, your entire team and your senior management get to the point where they feel deep empathy for your end user. So they not only are contributing fully to the project all along, but they also are champions for your project as you move further along into development. And remember, you don't know what you don't know. You are not representative of your end user. No matter how much you can relate to the product or relate to the problem you're trying to solve for, the fact that you're on a project team makes you non-representative. So you really need to go out there and learn. And also, remember, you're a sample of one. Then the other point, it takes a village and experts from other villages, cross-functional teams, avoiding silos, and external experts in innovation, research, and facilitation ensures faster, bigger, and better innovation. So those are some of my last thoughts before we go to Q&A. And so, Stuart,
we have a request to please review the 6 points of ideation again.
The 6 points of ideation. Okay, structure. So define phases of diversion and conversion. Clear and deep understanding of the target audience. That was number 2. Number 3, time. Allowing ample time to be creative, not rushing genius. 4, was the environment of play and the fact that people are more creative in the spirit of play, not feeling judged. 5, inspiration. So lots of rich inspiration from all different sources to help people think differently, inspire fresh thinking. And then 6, really having expertise in the room. I mean, a lot of times in a group we'll love to have, people new to the company, just out of school, because we think they have fresh ideas, which of course is true and wonderful. But if you just have a ideation session with a bunch of newbies, you don't get as far as if you have a lot of experts in the room, and especially from cross-category, broad industry perspective from other companies, et cetera. So those were the 6.
Fantastic. Another question about suggestions for getting more closed-off end users to open up and be willing to connect on a deeper level. So any ideas on approaches, ways, techniques?
First of all, I think, then that's sort of the pre-work and identifying where your biases are and making the decision to be vulnerable yourself. So when you talk to people, you have to spend time, number one, so they feel comfortable, and you have to kind of be vulnerable yourself and really connect with them on a human level. And so people open up. I've worked on lots of personal care projects where we had some really sensitive material. And of course, you don't do that in a focus room. You don't do that online. You talk to people and have them feel comfortable with you and comfortable that you actually care about their experience and care about what they're going through. And also, too, sometimes even, it's helpful, not sometimes, often, almost always I do this in these situations, is to have people do some journal work before and choose photos, visuals, objects in their home that represent how they feel about the situation. A lot of times people can talk better through a visual and how that visual represents their experience versus telling you directly. Hopefully that was helpful.
Great. Another question. Any suggestions on how to penetrate and gain empathy with cultural or racial minorities?
Well, I think you have to you have to be authentic. I mean, that's the number one. You have to be authentic. And in general, I find it works better if you are actually a member of the minority group. So I would hire a professional moderator who represents that target. Not to say it couldn't. I mean, I'm Caucasian. Those on the phone can't tell. But, and I have done focus groups with African Americans and Hispanics. And so you can get there. It's just that it takes a little longer to establish authenticity.
Question about first and second moment of truth. How does empathy translate into FMOT and SMOT actions on the shelf, given consumers make decisions in 3 to 4 seconds at the shelf?
Yeah, well, I think this doesn't exactly answer the question, but to think through that question, I think you have to realize that even though consumers are making the decision at shelf, they're bringing with them all their deep subconscious feelings about the category, the brand, and their own personal life. And so the deep empathic understanding transfers to behavior in store and at shelf. And go shopping with people. Go shopping with people. Help them load their car. Go home with them. Help them put their products, where they store them. Watch them and talk to them while they use the product. Because really the SMOT experience is part of a holistic experience with your brand.
Great, thank you. Another question. When you are with your end user, do you not change their usage thinking by simply being there? How does their behavior or their usage?
Well, that's one of the constant struggles, right? And when we talk about true ethnographic research, if you really want to look at it from a anthropologist standpoint or a sociologist standpoint, you would just observe, and you wouldn't say anything or do anything. You'd be like, I'm just hanging out here. But anytime someone is observed, their behavior changes. Even if they are being videotaped, and they know they're being videotaped. Their behavior changes. So it's not something easy to get over, but what I'll say is it's what people don't want to hear. It's time. It's spending time, and so that people actually feel so comfortable with you and get used to you being there that they kind of go on autopilot with their behaviors. That people ask me, because I'm sure everyone on the phone has or on the webinar has heard the term lean startup, and what's the difference between a traditional innovation project and lean startup. And hopefully it has all the components we've talked about. Whether launching your own startup or creating an internal startup in a large corporation, ultimately culture dictates ultimate success. Just because your innovation team is in an urban center with a fridge full of free soda and microbrewed beer with bean bags and Nerf guns doesn't mean you have an innovative lean startup culture. So culture is really about creating a vision, allowing for individual and team risk-taking, aligning people to your core values and the vision and strategy, building empathy and connections to end users as part of the team's DNA, as well as your management's expectation. Ensuring a learning organization is critical, making sure that people feel like they're encouraged to learn and not having to show up at work every day to prove that they're actually working. Send them out in the field learning and interacting. And then accountability for delivering the learning at all levels and at all stages, while still feeling comfortable with uncertainty. I think that's part of the problem with, and a lot of big companies are developing internal lean startup projects, but they're still not comfortable with the uncertainty. They still want either a lot of data or a forecasting model or something to eliminate the measure of risk. And that takes a lot of time, and that takes away from the concept of a lean startup.
Another question. Many of the examples we talked about certainly are related to marketing and consumer goods. The Thank You Mom campaign is the best example out of that realm, although at the end the goal is to gain awareness to sell more products. Are there additional ways or different approaches to think about this tool set for nonprofits?
Oh, I love that question because I actually have used this with nonprofits. I've done a whole program for nonprofits and help them, understand, who they're serving, how they can serve them better, but also all stakeholders, including those that they're seeking donations from, and the broader community, social service agencies that they interact with. So the model, some of the terms might change, but you still need to identify the opportunity, what's out there, where should you be playing, and what are the trends. And, even a nonprofit has competitors. Who's vying for the same amount of dollars? Who's trying to serve the same people? And certainly empathy is critical. You still need to define and really get to a definition on who you're serving and how you want to serve them and how best to communicate. And then the prototyping and testing, you might not have a physical product, but you certainly, or maybe you do. Some nonprofits are actually working on social innovations so that they actually are maybe even selling a physical product so that the revenue then serves their nonprofit. But, the prototype and test it could be about talking to people about services and what those could deliver and not deliver, and actually even mocking up a service. I mean, this is an example probably, that's been around for a long time, but if just for basis of discussion, if you wanted to start a meal delivery system, well, just go start delivering meals to 2 or 3 houses and see how that might work. And that's a good test and learn experiment.
Great. We have another question about what suggestions do you have for working entirely remotely with users, not meeting them face-to-face?
Entirely remotely. So I guess the question versus, like, if my end user is remote and I have no budget, no means to talk to them face to face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have barriers. I would, if at all possible, kick off with them and have video chat in the beginning and explain that, I really would like to be in person. Here are the kind of things that I want to learn about you. I can't be there, so I'm going to rely on you to be as helpful and authentic as you can with me, and have that conversation with them up front and explain. And there's all kind of tasks you can have them do. You can have them, videotape themselves while they're doing tasks, brushing their teeth, going to the store. I mean, there are all kind of ways to do that. You could have them keep diaries and include pictures. You could send them visuals to react to. So there's all kinds of ways to do that. So what I might think about it is, if I was really with that person, what would I ask them to do or tell me, and how might I recreate that in a virtual way?
So excellent. Thank you all for attending. Also, if you have further questions or you want to be in touch with Jandie or us about other innovation challenges, please feel free to email me directly. And I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.